One of the things that I am always the most excited for when it comes to the new patch is going to be new abilities, new builds that can be made from either items or buffs. In this patch, while we didn't get very many buffs to almost anything, we did get a bunch of new unique items. On top of that, we got updates to a bunch of items, and we did get a few new skills. There are some builds that in particular I'm excited about, and I wanted to let you know to look out for these builds in the days coming up to the new league, and to give you some ideas of maybe something that you can work towards if you really want to make a build of your own, if no one else figures it out before that. Boys, I want to give a quick shout out to all of my generous patrons that have made the idea of transitioning to full-time a little bit less scary. So if you want to know more about Patreon, go check down in the description, but after seeing the support that I've gotten from you guys in only a day or two, it's a lot less scary, so I appreciate you all. And as always, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and without further ado, let's get into it. Now, I do want to start with the new gems. We're going to get into all the items and stuff later, but of importance, the biggest thing that I'm always ready to look into is going to be new gems. This time around, we didn't get as many as I would like, but I do feel that they're probably kind of limited in the amount of ideas that they're going to have for new abilities. We have so many in the game right now. This is why I always ask for reworks instead of new gems. However, there is one compared to the others that I'm a little bit more interested in. Now, going through the list, Alchemist Mark is okay. I think this will be fine. Overcharge is very interesting in that it's going to allow us to have like much more significantly powerful shocks. Will probably get up to like 75% shock or some crazy stuff with certain abilities. And then we have Galvanic Field and Lightning Conduit. So Galvanic Field is cool, but this isn't the one that I'm the most interested in. This is something that we'll have to see how it interacts and how it moves around and how it feels. However, Lightning Conduit, I think this is the one that most people are looking at. So the thing that got super popular immediately that you might have seen some people talking about, I know there were at least a couple big content creators talking about this, but if you haven't heard about it yet, the way that people are thinking about this ability is that since you need to apply a shock and then you need to consume that shock, the thing that people thought about was, well, there's only a few ways to consistently apply shocks, and that's going to be either the Necromancer Corpse node or Skitterbots. Now, beyond that, there are other ways that I think are actually going to be better than that, because from what I've seen, you're going to have to spawn a new corpse every single time that you want to use that node to shock, and that's going to make it a little bit harder to get Lightning Conduit really going and doing enough single target damage to matter. And then with Skitterbots, it should tick consistently, but it's probably not going to be a powerful enough shock to matter. Now, the thing that is interesting to me and the idea that I think is really going to be the way to do this is going to be through Orb of Storms, because with Orb of Storms, you are going to be hitting with Orb of Storms every single time you cast something else. The idea would be is that you would link Orb of Storms with something like the new support that you've got here through Overcharge. You could go a Elementalist if you wanted to, take the Lightning node so that you could shock really, really, really hard. And then you could probably get, if you took the new Lightning Masteries and Overcharge and all this stuff, you could probably get max effectiveness shocks extremely easily. And this ability does 10% more damage per 5% shock on the enemy. So I think it would be extremely straightforward to hit 50% shock on most enemies, even bosses, if you scaled this well enough. So that is 100% more damage. Now, GGG was nice enough to give us the actual level 20 gems quite a few days ago now, but they were only on Twitter as far as I could tell. So the gem does 614 to 1842 lightning damage. However, if it is going to be doing 10% more damage per 5% shock, and we can get Orb of Storm shocking like 50, 60, 70%, however much the maximum is in the next patch with like masteries and such, that is a lot of more damage multiplier. So this could be pretty solid. We're gonna have to see. The new Path of Building update is supposed to come really, really soon. I'm actually waiting for that to go start on my stream at twitch.tv/BigDubs, which you should go follow, by the way. But with a really big shock with Orb of Storms, you should be able to just cycle this super quickly. Like, hit him with a Lightning Conduit, the Orb of Storm should shock, it should consume that shock, and then over and over and over and over again should be really, really solid. So I think there will at least be 1 or 2 Lightning Conduit builds. I think that like an Elementalist with Orb of Storms is probably going to be the way that people do it. I don't know how consistent like Corpse Walker or something like that would be. Skitterbots is okay, and you'll probably use Skitterbots on most builds that function with this just as an easy way to clear, or, you know, like the Corpse Walker node is an easy way to clear just because it's going to be kind of frustrating to shock something and then have to consume it with another ability. A lot of people don't like 2-button abilities unless they're really, really, really powerful. And this ability in and of itself doesn't look like it's insanely powerful just off of its own merits. Really seems like you'd have to get that second ability doing some work. So be on the lookout for this. I do think that Lightning Conduit has some potential here. It should be able to very easily get into red maps with like an elementalist setup with some decent defenses, something like left side of the tree defenses, as well as like Orb of Storms, Lightning Conduit. Putting the overcharge support on the Orb of Storms should be pretty good. I might mess around with a POB on this if I have time and post a video about it, but unfortunately I'm a little sick at the moment. The universe chooses the best times to make me sick, so I may not be able to get that one out, no promises. So now let's move on to the next thing that I'm super excited about, and that's going to be the new Sunblast unique. I have always enjoyed trapping builds. It's something that I've played for a decent amount of time, and I do think that Sunblast in particular is going to be the new way that we really scale traps in general. Now, Seismic Trap is getting pretty heavily nerfed, and Seismic Trap does not interact well with Sunblast at all, so do keep that in mind. But there are a couple other traps that are pretty notable with this. On the list of like traps that were good previously, it was basically like Seismic was way up here, Fire Trap was right below it. Those are both being nerfed pretty heavily right now. And then a decent step down was Explosive Trap, and then right behind Explosive Trap was Ice Trap. Those were the traps that were pretty decent as of recent note. So Sunblast unique works really well with both Explosive and Ice Trap. However, I think Ice Trap is probably the more notable one here, just because it's a little bit less annoying to hit things with. So the reason why Sunblast is going to be so powerful is that traps have one major issue most of the time, and that's the fact that you tend to want to use Cluster Trap on traps without cooldowns, and that gives a significant less multiplier to damage. What Sunblast is going to do is Sunblast is going to make it so that skills which throw traps throw up to 2 additional traps, and traps land in an area around targeted location. Now, if you were reading the patch notes with me previously, you might have noticed that the Sunblast unique has already been nerfed since the release actually happened. This previously said 1 to 3 traps, however, it is just now consistently 2 traps. I still think this is going to be very strong, I still think it's going to be very good, because still throwing 3 traps every single time is still 200% more damage, and you can overcome the downside of the like traps not being able to be triggered by enemies relatively easily. It's not that hard to deal with. Now, the idea behind triggering the traps is that you have a 50 to 75% reduced trap duration. It was 80% previously, so you kind of just have to wait for the trap to go off, right? With something like Ice Trap, this is going to be with a 75% reduced roll. It's going to be like a little bit under 2 seconds most of the time for them to proc. However, if you're playing a Saboteur, all that you need is that first Ice Trap to proc after like a second and a half or so, and all of the rest of them will proc with it. If we go into Path of Building here and we search for traps, one of the notable things about traps in general is that you typically go the Saboteur Ascendancy. There are some people who have done like Raiders and other things in the past, but typically if you're going trap, Saboteur is the way to go. And as I said previously, we do have Chain Reaction, which would make it so that Ice Traps or Explosive Traps would all trigger at the same time, so you wouldn't have to worry too much about that, you know, problem with Sunblast. And it would give those traps a little bit of increased area of effect, meaning they'll overlap a little bit better. So it should be okay with Sunblast. I know typically on Ice Trap, I don't think you go Chain Reaction. I think you go Explosives Expert, just because Chain Reaction isn't that great for a non-cooldown trap. However, I think that potentially, maybe, we'll have to see, you might go Chain Reaction. However, there's another problem here. The fact that your traps are no longer ever triggering from an enemy is a little problematic, notably on things like the Trap Mastery. You'll notice when it says recover 30 life when your trap is triggered by an enemy. When you are using Sunblast, your trap cannot be triggered by an enemy. So this is going to be a little bit of a nerf there. It also is a nerf to Tinker Skin in particular, because Tinker Skin has a bunch of things that say triggered by an enemy. So you're not going to be able to use Tinker Skin, because I mean, literally this is only going to be a life and energy shield and evasion chest piece. That's it. Can't generate frenzy charges, can't get the phasing, can't get recover life, can't get recover energy shield. And also another problem to overcome here is going to be the fact that you cannot use Bear Trap. Bear Trap does at the very end of its cycle. It does not proc, it simply just gets destroyed, right? As you can see here, traps do not trigger at the end of their duration at the very bottom there. I think that's the same for Conversion Trap, but I don't think people care that much about Conversion Trap, if we're going to be honest with you. But that's the idea. There are some downsides, but a potential just like 3x amount of damage that you're doing is pretty solid. So I would look forward to seeing some trap builds, some non-cooldown based trap builds coming out of the woodworks. I know someone on Discord linked me to, I think Jung has already made a like preliminary POB for like an Inquisitor Ice Trapper. And that could probably be pretty good, but you are going to not be a Saboteur, so probably a little bit more damage potentially, but I think a Saboteur might, at the end of the day, end up being better. You could probably do just about whatever you wanted, though. Sunblast Unique seems like it's going to be pretty good, and it gives you those extra trap throws. Bunch of extra damage, bunch of extra utility. Just got to deal with the fact that it's going to take a couple seconds for them to proc. Now, one of the first uniques that jumped out to me was Dialla's Malefaction. Now, I will forgive you if you don't know what Dialla's Malefaction is, but the item here that we're talking about is this item, if you've ever seen it. So the way this works is that it makes it so that you don't need to worry about what slots you're socketing your gems into. It gives you certain buffs depending on what color the actual slot is, and it ignores completely what color the gem is. So as you can see, the new updated Dialla's Malefaction is going to be giving us some pretty interesting buffs here. So gem socketed in red sockets have +2 to level, gem socketed in green sockets have 30% to quality, and then you get some extra experience in blue sockets. This isn't that big of a deal though. Now notably, this chess piece has pretty much no defenses. It has absolutely nothing. So you need to take that into account, that this is probably going to be a softcore only item. You're not really going to be able to make very much use of this in hardcore, I would imagine. Off the top of my head, the first thing that popped into my head was the Maw build. Now, I have been working on a Maw POB for a little bit, and this is by no means finished whatsoever. We're probably going to work on this over on stream once POB is updated. However, something that I was struggling with was that it was very difficult to get spell suppression on this build in general, right? Most of the time, people were going across the tree up to the top. They were coming over to this wheel over here to Instinct and grabbing spell suppression here. They were doing like Skin of the Lords and a whole bunch of other stuff like that because summon golems were scaling very well with quality as well as levels. Skin of the Lords is not going to work as well anymore because particularly quality on golem gems no longer scales life. So instead of coming over to the right here and trying to get spell suppression with all of the spell suppression nerfs that have happened to gear, it's going to be pretty difficult to get enough spell suppression easily. However, I do think it's still possible. Now, for a budget version of the build, you're probably just going to go over to the left side of the tree. You're going to stack a whole bunch of armor with things like energized armor. You're also probably going to be going glancing block. Now, the problem and the conundrum in my head that I was thinking of is like, well, I mean, glancing block, if you're getting 75 block and spell block, is similar to uncapped spell suppression. It's okay, there's nothing wrong with it. It's very good for just like smoothing out maps, but it's not great. Typically, the main reason that you're going to want to do glancing blows with 75 is that you'd be able to use a life recover on block shield. And the problem that I was running into is that the way that this build really worked is it was going to be using Magna Eclipsis, and it was going to be socketing each of those skills into it. It's going to be socketing our Stone Golem, Mini Life, as well as an Empower into that item, getting a whole bunch of levels from that, and, you know, basically abusing the +2 to level of socketed gems. Gave us Elemental Aegis, gave us life, gave us a bunch of armor, a bunch of energy shield. However, we weren't going to be able to get life gain on block. Now, with the new Diallas, as you might have seen previously, now we can put the Stone Golem into one of the red sockets, get +2 to levels of that. We can put the Empower in one of the red sockets, get +2 levels of that. And we can put our minion life into the green socket, get +30% quality on that, because as far as I can tell, I don't know if I'm correct here or not, but I'm pretty sure I checked. I don't think minion life quality is getting nerfed, because the quality of this is giving 15% increased maximum minion life at 20 quality, so if you got an extra 30% quality off of this, that would be pretty decent, right? This would also open us up to be using a like +1 life gain on block type shield if we could manage to get one of those eventually. Even just like life resists as well as life gain on block. Could even do like a hybrid life gain on block, energy shield on block shield. Those aren't insanely difficult to get, but it does open up a pretty big avenue for this in particular. So we'll do some POB tinkering with that after we do get the new patch. As well on this Maw build, there is a interesting idea that one of my chat members was talking about, was stacking some shock since this ability hits so very hard. But we'll talk about that at another time. Now, beyond that with Dialla's Malefaction, there is this list that I was linked to. I'm not 100% certain about this, but someone said that someone over from Palstron's community had made this immediately after the patch had launched. There's a bunch of very interesting things in here that you can make use of Diallas to get some pretty interesting ideas. Now, this was made, as I said, quite a while ago, so this could be updated since then. But some notable ones in here is things like getting 12 maximum Raging Spirits is pretty powerful, being able to 100% convert Crackling Lance into chaos damage. It could do a lot of interesting things there. Keep in mind, this is with like Ashes and a 20% gem and Enhance and Diallas and all that to get 128%. So this is some high-end stuff, but it does open up possibilities for this chess piece to be pretty decent. So things like raised zombies are going to be gaining 64 of fizz damage as extra chaos damage. I know it says 128% taken, but you can always get that node that makes like minions that you have spawned recently are immune to damage for a couple of seconds. So that could completely negate that. And then we've got things like Dark Pact with getting more percentage of life being sacrificed of your skeletons. And then if you make your skeletons perma with the new boots, there could be a lot of very interesting things that could happen because of this item. Now, none of this is set in stone or anything, and it's probably going to take a lot of effort because if we're factoring in Ash's quality right now with the new changes to Divine Orbs and all of that, a little bit yikes, but this isn't necessarily like the exact reason why I would want to use Diallas. I would be using it just because it's an easy way to get +2 to level of gems, as well as some extra quality, and it allows us to use a life gain on block shield for the Maw build. So definitely a cool item that I'm super interested in seeing if it will work. As I said, just gotta wait for the POB update. Another very interesting idea is this Ephemeral Edge unique sword. Now, previously, if you don't know about Ephemeral Edge, it has not been a great item before. If we look at the old version of this, it was basically just like increase maximum energy shield, some reduced life, physical damage, just, you know, a kind of a trash item, to be quite honest with you. Now, the new Ephemeral Edge, if you can see here, is attacks with this weapon have added maximum lightning damage equal to 20% of your energy shield. Now, the thing that's notable here is that this is basically like Energy Blade, but not trash. Because Energy Blade currently makes it so that buff grants 50% less maximum energy shield, and then it gives you, you know, up to like 40% of your energy shield as damage. However, this makes it so that attacks with this weapon have added maximum lightning damage equal to 20% of your energy shield. So if you're going to be using any kind of attack that uses both of your weapons and you do wield these, there's a lot of interesting things that can come from this. Notably, this Ephemeral Edge Blade Trap build that Captain Lance was talking about. This could be something pretty powerful. We're gonna have to see how everything lays out, but it could be a pretty interesting idea. The fact that you can scale up your energy shield, not have to sacrifice so much of it, it could be pretty strong. And the next item I want to talk about here are these new gloves. Now, the story behind this is that this is a supporter unique from someone who bought the like Eternal package years and years and years and years ago and just never used it and decided to give it to a friend of theirs, and now that friend has created this unique. Super weird, but notably, this is in the Gauntlet slot, so you can't use other crazy gloves to be able to interact with this. However, what this does is it gives us a way to regenerate rage per second off of our life regeneration. Now, you might know about the new Chainbreaker notable. The new Chainbreaker that's going to be happening is not regenerate 3 rage per second. It is regenerate rage based off of your actual raw mana regen. So this is kind of the like brother, sister, whatever you want to call it, for life regeneration. Now, it does say life recovery from regeneration is not applied. However, the first thing that popped into my mind, and this was confirmed by the creator of the unique, is that what about Inquisitor? So Inquisitor gets these nodes that allows you to convert your life regeneration and double it as energy shield regeneration. So if you're going like a low life Inquisitor, which I've played a couple of those in the past, this kind of, as long as you can get enough life recovery and life regeneration and life leech to manage your like base life pool, this enables Berserk pretty easily. You might remember that I had that like Ice Nova Spellslinger Inquisitor Fanaticism build from like a league or two ago. I probably will be trying to get these gloves going in that build sometime soon, because we could get a pretty good amount of life recovery, and if this enables using Berserk, that absolutely fixes pretty much all of the problems with the build. If you don't know about that build, it uses Fanaticism to be able to cast at like an absolutely insane rate. Now, if we look at Berserk, Berserk does give us more attack speed, more movement speed, less damage taken, and then you lose 5 rage per second. Now, for some reason, it's not showing the alt qualities here, and I'm not, okay, here's the alt qualities. It looks like it's a little different now. So the buff is now going to grant more spell damage when you're using Divergent. So on that build that I was playing before, we're going to get more spell damage, less damage taken, more movement speed, which are all super powerful things for that build, essentially just for swapping our gloves out to these. They give us life, they give us some fire resistance. Physical attack damage leeches life does almost nothing for the build, but spell-based Inquisitors, look forward to be able to be using Berserk again with these gloves. Seems pretty good. Next thing I want to talk about is Ralakesh's Impatience. This is more so a theory than anything. However, I think that there might be something here, okay? So the new Ralakesh's Impatience unique boots say no longer gain a Frenzy, Endurance, or Power Charge once per second while you're stationary. Instead, it now causes your minimum Frenzy, Endurance, and Power Charges to be equal to your maximum while you are stationary. It also has 30% increased movement speed. So you might have remembered these boots as like people who are doing big crazy bosses and stuff would put them on at the very beginning, get all of their charges up, and then swap them with their real boots and then go fight the boss. That's the only real use that these ever had. However, when I logged into the game here and I was doing some Steel Champ testing, I decided, well, how does minimum frenzy charges work? How do they work when you lose them? So you have this ring here that says +1 to minimum frenzy charges, right? So it gives you the frenzy charge permanently. I'm like, well, if when you lose those minimums, do you keep all of the charges? And as far as I can tell, for right now, the answer is yes. So the first thing that popped into my mind was, do you guys remember that like Juice build where he went a Slayer and he basically went all of the charges and just did like discharge and stuff like that? So if we keep the frenzy charge, right, I would assume that we would keep all of the charges from Ralakesh as well, right, as soon as we started moving. So if we were doing some kind of like Slayer, Cyclone, cast on crit, discharge build with like Badge of the Brotherhood and that node, and then getting like 27 total charges, I'm assuming that as long as when you were using Cyclone and you stutter stepped, it would essentially just give you full charges every game tick, right? Like, I think that's the way that it would work. I'm not 100% certain here, but interesting to say the least. Like I said, this is just a theory, and I don't exactly know that this is how it's going to work, but if it does, pretty cool. Now, last but definitely not least is the new Clayshaper unique mace. Now, you might remember back in the day, I had a like stone golem elementalist, like where the golems actually did the damage, and that build was pretty powerful, but it kind of fell to the wayside a little bit over time. However, now we have this new Clayshaper where previously minions dealt like 8 to 16 additional damage at the most, but now it has golems deal like 100 to 150 added attack physical damage. So I think that potentially, and I'm the least certain out of all of the stuff that I've talked about here, I'm the least certain about this one in particular, that's why I left it till last. I'm pretty certain that if you just randomly add like 200 to 300 added physical damage to the golems, whatever golems they might be. It doesn't have to be stone golems. It could be any of the golems that use attacks, right? That's pretty good, right? Like, I feel like that's pretty solid. Adding just 300 attack damage, like, I'm not even certain, but what does stone golem have currently? Does it say, like, how much attack it does? Guess we could go to PWDB and see what stone golem information they have here. Now, I'm not exactly sure if this is the right stone golem, but it kind of looks like it is stone golem, rock golem, summon, and I don't see anything else here except this golem unique one. But it looks like the rock golem slam is dealing 100% more attack damage, so that's based off of attack damage. It looks like the roll is also based off of attack damage, and then it's just got a melee attack that's based off of attack damage. So if we're adding on like 200 to 300 of this, that's pretty significant on top of, you know, everything else that we've got going. So if we were getting some like impale fizz attack golem kind of stuff going on, it should be pretty good. But the thing that I'm wondering is that going to make up for 3 levels of the stone golem? I don't know how well the stone golem scales with levels, so let's see here. Base damage of his melee attack is 2059 to 3080. 2 levels of it. Ooh, levels are quite a bit, so maybe this isn't as good as I thought it was. However, maybe there's something here. I'm not 100% certain, but we'll have to see. And that is going to be it for the video. So a lot of cool build ideas going into this next patch that could still work. We have been starved for new builds for so long that I'm like super excited about trying all of these. I'm personally just going to be doing like a heist strategy very early on, gather up a bunch of money, and then work on whatever builds that I'm interested in working on. So we'll see what goes with that. We'll see how everything functions. We'll see how everything works out, but hopefully we get a lot of new cool builds going into 3.19 because the mechanic itself looks really powerful. It looks really fun, and hopefully we'll have some new cool builds to do it with. So remember, boys, if you're enjoying this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos, and stay safe out there in Ray class. And I'll see you guys in 3.19 Lake of Kalandra.